So I grew up in church. My dad was a pastor. I think when I was about 11, I never know what age. I always forget that stuff. But somewhere when I was very young, the church needed a drummer, and so I started playing drums. We had like a full band at our church. It was kind of around the time that like Hillsong was really big. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but like those kind of songs, and that was my, I think one week the drummer left, the next week I was up there, and I learned a 4/4 beat, and that's all I knew. And then it wasn't too long until I fell in love with it, and buying every drum video I could find. My older brother Jake, he was the drummer, and then he became the keyboard player, and ended up being like the kind of the music minister at my dad's church. So he led praise and worship, and he taught me to play drums. So I went to a drama school in New York when I was 18, because acting had always been, the thing I thought would pay the bills one day. And when I moved to New York, I couldn't have a drum set. It's impossible to have a drum set there. So I got a guitar and started, learning some chords and trying to figure out the songs that I liked. And that's kind of what I was up to in the evenings after acting school. I didn't really start attempting to write songs until I moved to LA, and I was in a band in LA where I was the drummer. We were called Mitchell's Folly. I still don't know how we came up with that or what that means, so don't ask. My favorite part about being in that band is we all lived together. We all had a big house together in LA, and we would sit around and just write songs together. That was some of the best memories in LA that I had, while I was driving around wasting gas, going to all these auditions, being told no, then I, would go home and write songs and find some solace in that. So that's, that was sort of the beginning. And even then, I didn't think, it was ever something that I was gonna do professionally. I just thought, it's cool of the other guys in the band to let me be in on a part of that process. It was called, it was actually for a television show called Outlaw Country that we shot here in Nashville about 12 years ago. And it was a guy who was a singer-songwriter, but was also in a mob, basically, like in a gang in the South. It was this very cool premise. It never went to air, but to book that job, I wanted to show them that I could play and sing, so I wrote a song called Where the Wild Grass Grows. That was the first song I ever wrote. It's not bad, actually. I listened to it the other day. It's okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's okay. And I wrote 2 for that show that they put in the show. So if you can find that pilot, which is out there somewhere, there's 2 of my songs are in it. It took 2 years of talking to my manager before I decided to really do it, because I was so worried about the judgment, because I sort of felt that way. It's almost, I just really didn't want it to feel like I was looking for another revenue stream or more attention, or, that's really not what it was about. The last thing in the world that I want is more attention, to be honest. I don't really like it. So it was just more about doing something that I always really loved to do, and trying my best not to come across like that, not to come across like somebody who just, trying to raise their profile. That's not what it was about. I mean, at the end of the day, it was just like, the thing that was keeping me was like the fear of judgment, and then me judging myself, being self-critical, and just having to go, you know what, life's short. Lost my dad a couple years ago, and that was a big, I started right after that. Like, that's when I was like, you know what, I realized like my own mortality, and I'm gonna look back one day and be like, why didn't you do that? You had this really great opportunity to do something that you wanted to do, but you were too afraid to do it because of what people thought. And that whole experience just kind of sealed the deal for me, where I was like, I don't really care what people think. It's been, creating a song for me has been different pretty much every time. I never know what's going to come first. And I also haven't been doing it long enough to kind of know what my process is. I'm still tinkering away at what works best for me. Some of the things were just title ideas that I had. I'll have like a full-blown melody all the way through with no words, and then the words come later. Dave and I did a song on the album where he just wrote a guitar riff, and I just started singing gobbledygook over it and tracked it that way, and then went back and wrote words, and the next day went in and sang the song. that song Black Powder. Like we did that in 20 minutes with a scratch track, and then went back and wrote words to it, and then did it the next day. So it's been really different every time. And I like every way in has been really fun and really different, you know. And then there's definitely ideas where like, this is what I'm trying to get at, you know, and it's a concept more than a melody or words. It's like, this is sort of a feeling I'm trying to get at, or an experience that I had that I'm trying to articulate, and then trying to sort of like carve around that until it's something that makes sense. You know, it's all just, it's such a pure form of creativity, you know, more than if we're talking about acting or making an album. There's just so many things that you have, like boxes that need to be checked, and people you need to make happy, and technical aspects, and time and money and all these things. But writing songs is the most pure form of creativity that I've experienced. I just got really lucky with, you know, UMG wanted to sign me, which they probably shouldn't have done because I was so new, and they're such a great big label with huge talents, and you know, they took a bet on me, and because of that, I was able to, you know, get sent in some of these rooms that I probably didn't deserve to be in that quickly. I hadn't worked my way into those rooms, but there I was. And yeah, so none of it was lost on me how lucky I got. I mean, clearly I'd struggled in another artistic area for years. It took me 20 years to get to where I am now with, you know, the film business. And it's funny because Yellowstone is like the first thing that most people have seen. So they think I just got there, but that took 20 years.
Overnight success.
Yeah.
20 years.
And I think because of that, you know, going in, if I would have just gone into those rooms right off the top and not had struggled somewhere else, I might have not kind of understood or appreciated the position I was in. But I really do appreciate it, and I really do understand that there are people who, you know, play empty bars for 20 years to try to get in rooms like that. And yeah, it means a lot. It was all the same recording session. We did take a little bit of a break with Dave, but we were just recording songs and didn't know, you know, the plan. And I think we were all kind of like shooting from the hip as far as the best way to put it out. I think ultimately it was just, the decision was, you haven't put anything out. Why don't we start with an EP like most people do, just to kind of let people get used to the idea that you're making music, let it simmer for a little bit, and then we'll put out a full project, rather than just, you know, just throw out a full project out of the blue. I mean, it was only, I don't know, not much more than, it was less than a year from the first song I put out until the EP, and then like 3 or 4 months later, this whole album. So I think it was smart to kind of just trickle it a little bit, rather than just like, here's a bunch of this guy's voice that you've never heard before, you know. Just conversations through, like I said, I think we're all kind of just making it up as we went along. Pain Pills or Pews was an idea I had for a song that I'd never really quite nailed, and realized that I was like never going to. I just liked the title. For me, it just felt like where I come from, those are people's options. You know, you either, those are like the answers to the problems. You know, you went to church or you went to the bar. You went. It was sort of that whole thing, and I could never nail that in a song, but I always liked the title. And I think my manager had brought up, I really like that title too. Maybe you could name the EP that. I was like, yeah, let's do it. It doesn't, you know, it didn't really necessarily need to be one of the song titles. And then when it came time for the full-length album, I was like, you know, I like when people do self-titled as a first album, just to be like, here's who I am. This is what this album is about. First and foremost is introducing you to me. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That was the idea, was trying to get at really letting people in on who I am as a person. Clearly with acting, I'm always saying someone else's words. I'm playing a character, and the better you are at that, the more people believe you as that. And I think it was really important for me to be honest with people right off the bat. You know, make something that wasn't like too produced or too lowest common denominator where, again, I'm playing a character. Like, I do that already. I wanted it to be really personal and really about me. And then from there, I think, I've always loved people who can write story songs that aren't necessarily about them. And I'd like to do that one day. I aspire to write songs like that, but I think it was important right off the bat to just be honest. So, yeah, again, UMG got us a meeting, and I didn't realize that Dave and I had met in LA. Dave lived in LA for a really long time while I was there, while I was doing, the country band thing. And while I was doing that pilot I was talking about, Outlaw Country, Shooter Jennings was doing the music for that. And Shooter and Dave came up together and were really good friends. And he took me to his house. So when I met Dave here to do the album, I didn't remember. It had been like 12 years or something. I didn't remember that we'd met and I'd been to his house. And he sort of refreshed my memory, and we had stuff to talk about. That meeting was very simple. They were just like, look, I think you're cool. I'd like to do this. I need to be able to connect with the songs too. Like, send me some songs. So I sent him like 3 or 4 songs, and then he said, yeah. I mean, I'm a guy straight off the boat trying to find my sound. I didn't have time to figure that out the right way. I'm learning to sing. I'd never been a singer before. There's just so much stuff I'm trying to figure out all at once, and the being so intimidating going into the studio for the first time, I was just having a hard time wrapping my head around all of that. And Dave was so good at helping me find that stuff, helping me like kind of come out of my shell, feel more comfortable singing. He also plays most of the guitars on the album. He sort of does that. He likes to be in the band while he's making something, which is really cool. He's not just sitting behind a board somewhere telling you what to do. He's playing with you. And he brought everything. And that's his band. I didn't have a band yet, so those are his players, who are some of the best guys in Nashville. Yeah, but quickly with the songwriters and with Dave, that's where the beauty of Nashville comes in. Like, these people are really sweet, cool people. I felt very taken care of and very, they're very collaborative, and no one thinks they're better than anyone else. Or, you could be writing with Tony Lane, who's a legend, and he treats you like he treats anybody, whether you're just starting out or whether you're a huge star, Yeah. And you get the sense that kind of everybody that does well in this town acts that way. So that intimidation went out the window pretty quick, and then it was just me getting in my own way and kind of trying not to judge myself. That was very intimidating, and thinking like, when this actually comes out and I've made an album and, there's this pressure of like wanting it to do well, and what are people going to think? That was really, really intimidating for sure. I think, again, it just sort of came down to, we'd put a few of the songs out already, and out of the ones that we hadn't, we're just trying to think of things that were like what might connect with a lot of people and be, something that meant a lot to me. Like I said, I grew up in church. If I didn't put some sort of spirituality on this album, I'd be lying. It's such a big part of my life, my upbringing. And also, I'd say like the girl part, my wife has become the most important thing in my life. And so that song just felt really honest, even though I didn't write it. But that's why we cut it. I could say every one of those words and mean it. And we wouldn't have cut a song that didn't feel that way. I think it takes a little longer than the time that I've had to really nail down kind of what sets you apart sonically from other people. Mm-hmm. We've definitely gotten a lot closer. I was, not only making the album, but then having the band that I tour with play the album. That sounds different already from the album. That sounds different from the work tape, and it sort of starts to evolve really organically that way. But now I'd say, from the last few shows of the tour I did last year, from having never played a show to, going on a first tour, it really started to become something, and you could feel it. like it, and you could feel like when it shifted, and it did start to feel like my thing. And you know, if you were to go see 100 bands, we would sound a little different than the other band. You know, it's becoming something. Oh man. Well, you know, I'm 40 years old. I'm not 20 years old. I think a lot of people start when they're in their 20s and probably have it pretty figured out by the time they're my age. So it's been a learning curve. I've never slept on a bus before. You know, while it's moving, I've probably slept in, but you know, when they're like sitting still. It's fun. I love the guys I'm out there with. It's a good time. Still dealing with a lot of learning nerves. You know, it's not only the show, the hour that you play, it's the 2 hours before and the 2 hours after, where there's a lot of people who want to meet you and want to talk to you, and there's a lot of energy exchanged. Getting used to all that, because you know, there's people who can. This person come backstage and say hi, and it might be the only time that you're in that town, or they might get the chance to meet you, and they like what you do. Yeah. So you want to give them that opportunity, but also you've got to worry about how much energy you have to play the show and do everything else you got to do. I've always said I probably, if it weren't for Dave, I would have made it a little bigger, but that would have been a mistake, because the thing that I was worried about people judging is this guy coming in, getting all these opportunities, getting to work with people he doesn't deserve to work with, you know, and then you come out with this big Nashville sounding album with a lot of, you know, money behind it. And if it just sounds that way, then that kind of sets you up for more of that judgment, versus if the songs sound more honest and you're just saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what my voice sounds like without any auto-tune, without anything on it. This is a more honest representation of where I'm at as a you know, a musician, as a singer, as a songwriter. I think that was a good place to start, and that was Dave's idea, and he was right. It just would have felt, you know, false. Yeah. Where the album, where it is now, feels thoughtful and like there was effort put in, but it doesn't. It's not at that level where I jumped the line too much, you know. Yeah, so No Horse to Ride, we wrote with Jonathan Singleton and Tony Lane, both legendary, amazing songwriters. Like, again, did not deserve to be in that room. It was I think in the first week of rights that I ever had, and I think Jonathan came up with, he just had that line, cowboy with no horse to ride, and we just started thinking about, you know, what does that mean? And it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of how I feel about my wife. Like, at this point, without her, I'd be so lost, and we were just trying to think of, you know, and then it just became a bunch of metaphors for what that would, you know, be like. And I just loved, I think I told Jonathan in the room, I was like, I have a feeling my boss is going to want to put this in Yellowstone, because it just felt so Yellowstone. So the reason that was the first one we put out is I sent a work tape of that song to Taylor Sheridan, and he was like, I love that. I didn't hear anything, and then all of a sudden I got a call that they're like, they need you to sign a paper because they're putting it in Yellow. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then we had to go cut it at Dave's. So Dave was doing something else, and he was nice enough to let me go down to Savannah like on a weekend and cut it really fast. And that was the first thing that me and Dave did. And it was just, they wanted that stripped down thing like the iPhone. So it was just me and a guitar, and then Dave played a little accompanying guitar, and that was the track. And then later they put a little bit of drums and pedal steel and stuff on it. But yeah, that we had to just do it really fast, and we knew it was coming out in the show, so we had to put it out before that. Goes to Who We Were, that came from, I wrote that, half of that song in Montana, and I had a work tape of the half that I'd written, and the idea started as what my mom must be going through, having lost my dad. And I had that first verse, you know, when I walk out the door, I don't see a front yard anymore, and just thinking about like what that was like. And it was going to be a song about losing someone, you know, someone passing away. And then I took it in with Rodney Clausen, Nicole Gallion, and we decided to kind of make it more of a breakup song, or like more ambiguous. Like, in what way did you lose this person? And I think that's kind of what makes the song a little magical. You don't really tell the story. All you say is that all I'm doing on my end is missing you. What are you doing? And I thought it was really heartbreaking. Yeah, Wait for the Rain to Die Down. I think it was Liz's just a title she had. Wait for the Rain to Die Down. And again, I love writing that way where someone has a title and then now you're all trying to get at what could that song be, and everyone starts to throw out different ideas. And I think it was Hillary who she kind of just started that melody, Baby We Got Caught in a Hurricane. And it just, then it quickly became this song about every relationship has problems, but if the relationship's strong enough, you can actually go to each other to get through it, even if the problem is with each other, And I liked that concept, and that was a quick, easy day. Those three gals are so talented. I mean, again, like, how do you bring anything to that room? Having sort of watched this whole they're all like my babies, Yes. I love the way Hold On turned out because it's so different than the original work tape. That's another song that I didn't write, but it was written by one of my heroes, Foy Vance, who I think Nashville is now becoming very aware of, which is cool. He deserves it. He's an amazing songwriter, but he wrote it with, I forget how to say her name, Ilse or Ilse. Do you know who I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. I think she's more of a kind of pop leaning artist. And it's Ilse. Yes, exactly. So, and they wrote it for her. So it was written for a woman to sing. And I was listening to it. I'm like, it'd be really cool if like a grown man said these very vulnerable things, because like men don't talk that way. They don't, And I played it for Dave, and he was like, yeah, I think it definitely has to be a different vibe than what it sounds like here. It had kind of like almost Lana Del Rey kind of feel before, and Dave was like, let's just make it like real country. And I think for some reason, I felt the most comfortable singing that song. I don't know what it was, like if it was the range, the register, the words, I don't know, but I felt really in the pocket vocally singing that song, and I think it's probably my favorite vocal performance of the record. It all started with, the country that I grew up on would have been all the outlaw country guys. My dad loved, Johnny Cash, Waylon, Merle Haggard, Chris Christopherson. That was always in the house. The Horsemen, all that stuff. The Highwaymen, sorry, not the Horsemen. Elvis was a big thing in our house growing up. We were allowed to listen to oldies and Christian music, and then when we went hunting, we would sneak the outlaw country stuff when my mom wasn't around. So that was those were the musical influences to start. And then when I moved away, I went to New York and started getting into country bands. There was a lot of they called it alternative country at the time, but it was the stuff that sounded to me the most like the stuff from the 70s and the Waylons and all that. And there's a guy named Ryan Adams who put out a lot of good records. He was amazing, and that whole sound. I loved a band called Wilco. They're not incredibly country, they're very Americana. So all that kind of stuff. And then more recently, Foy is a huge one. I love big chart country songs too. I mean, and who those people are. They're writing all those songs. For me, it's more, I tend to be more in the vein of the songs that are less like good time songs, fishing songs. Like, I like all that stuff, but when people say things you're not supposed to say and talk too honestly, those are the things that I've always really loved. I mean, yeah, tons. And I'd love to do, more. I'd love to do some stuff with some legendary Nashville country stars too. I could go on and on. I mean, one of the dreams would be Chris Stapleton. I think it'd be hard to do because I'd feel stupid singing with him. The guy is the greatest singer of all time. I mean, wouldn't you? Who would want to stand next to that guy and sing? It would be cool though to say that I did it. I think he's just one of the greats. I think a lot of people's biggest surprise is that I'm doing music at all. That'll be, and then hopefully the surprise is that they like it and that it's good. That's all I can hope for. Yeah. In that I wasn't like afraid to kind of lean into who I really am and not kind of like, I think do what a lot of people do, where it's not really self-promoting the album. I'm not trying to sell you on the fact that I'm anything that I'm not. And I think I'd like people to take that away from it. I thought she was great to be able to walk in and just, do that. I know there must have been a part of her that was intimidated to do that, and to walk into a show that was already, so recognized by the community that she knows, and to do a thing that she doesn't normally do. I totally know how that would feel. But I thought she did a great job, and it was also inspiring to me to be like, I should feel the same way about wanting to do music and not so worried about that. Advice for songwriters or any artist in any art form, anybody that thinks they have something to offer in any way, you're not going to regret trying it, and you're not going to regret going all in on it, because no matter what happens, it'll get you somewhere that you weren't, And I think a lot of times people are afraid to leave what's comfortable, to do something that is obviously going to be hard and put you in a position to be judged, and where you're going to have to be vulnerable. And I just say that for me, it's been worth it. So definitely give it a shot, whatever it is. Growing up listening to music, I always felt like if I really connected with a song, is that feeling of, I'm not the only person who's felt this. I'm not the only person who's gone through this. It made you feel like you're not going through all of this stuff by yourself. You're not going through this alone. We're all in this together. And it's that feeling, I think, that makes music really important.